In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council, the powerful coalition of the universe's most advanced species, faces a growing threat. A rogue faction of aliens, led by an enigmatic warlord, has begun to devastate entire planets, their fleet seemingly unstoppable. Despite the Council's impressive military forces, they're struggling to keep up with the enemy's highly unpredictable and advanced tactics. Every time they make progress, the rogue faction adapts, making it clear that brute force alone won't defeat them. The Council's patience has run thin, and as the situation escalates, they realize they need help that goes beyond the usual diplomatic channels and military might. This threat requires something else, something unexpected. Their solution? The best mercenaries money can buy. Across the galaxy, the elite mercenaries are known by many names: revered, feared, and ruthless. A coalition of different species, their reputation for being capable of taking on the impossible is unrivaled. From the well-known Phaeracian sharpshooters to the Thali warriors whose strength is legendary, each member of the group is a master of destruction. The mercenaries have operated in some of the deadliest regions of space, handling jobs that others wouldn't dare to take. Their combined experience makes them a perfect solution to the Galactic Council's problem. They're hired by the Galactic Council for one purpose: to hunt down and annihilate the rogue faction. The Council believes that the mission is clear-cut: send in the mercenaries, obliterate the enemy, and restore peace. After all, this is what these mercenaries are trained to do. They've wiped out whole rebel factions before, and their skills in combat are unmatched. With them on the job, the Council is confident that the threat will be eliminated quickly and efficiently. However, there's a twist. The mercenaries are given an unexpected task: they must enlist the help of humanity. Earth, a small, relatively inconsequential planet in the grand scheme of galactic politics, is not the first place anyone would look for help in a galactic war. In fact, it's almost laughable that the Galactic Council would consider involving humanity in something so significant. But the situation is dire, and the rogue faction's unpredictability requires something that even the mercenaries haven't considered: human ingenuity. The mercenaries are skeptical. Humanity is far from advanced when it comes to technology and weaponry, and their military capabilities are laughable in comparison to the most powerful species in the galaxy. The mercenaries have seen the Earth's wars from a distance, and they know that humans have fought their own battles, yes, but those battles have mostly been won through sheer will and desperation, not skill or innovation. The idea of bringing in humans seems absurd. As they land on Earth, they try to push aside their doubts. They've dealt with underwhelming allies before, but this seems like an entirely different level of absurdity. The humans they meet are nothing like the highly disciplined soldiers they've fought alongside. Instead of cold, methodical warriors, they encounter civilians who seem almost unprepared for war. But the Council insists humanity's role in this mission is essential. The mercenaries are tasked with finding the one human operative who has been specifically selected for this job, an operative whose skills have been shrouded in mystery. The Galactic Council has given her a name, the Baba Yaga *, and while the name has an eerie, almost mythical ring to it, no one seems to know much about her. The mercenaries' only clue is her reputation. They arrive in a quiet, nondescript area of Earth, unsure of what to expect. What they find is not what they anticipated. They were expecting a well-equipped, well-trained warrior who could blend in with their team. Instead, they find a woman, older than any of them had expected, living alone in a remote cabin. She doesn't appear to have any advanced technology, no alien weapons, no military-grade armor, nothing that could justify the reputation she holds across the galaxy. The mercenaries are unsettled. They know that names like Baba Yaga aren't given lightly in this galaxy. Legends surround her, but what kind of legend is she really? And why would the Council entrust this mission to a human, and more specifically, to someone with such an unusual and terrifying nickname? The mercenaries try to remain professional, but it's impossible to ignore the sense of unease that grows as they approach the cabin. In their minds, they are prepared to witness something they haven't seen before, a woman who might just be a relic of an outdated war strategy, someone they might have to babysit while they carry out the real work. But as they knock on the door, they are greeted by the woman herself, the Baba Yaga. At first glance, there is nothing extraordinary about her. She seems calm, almost disinterested in the mercenaries' arrival. Her appearance, though, is striking. An older woman, weathered by years of experience, with eyes that seem far older than her years. She doesn't look like someone who would inspire fear, yet there's something about her that commands attention, even from the battle-hardened mercenaries. The leader of the mercenaries steps forward, ready to assert control and get to the business of the mission. But something in Baba Yaga's gaze stops him in his tracks. She welcomes them with a half-smile, one that doesn't seem friendly but rather knowing. "You've come for the job, haven't you?" she asks, her voice low and laced with an edge that sends a shiver down their spines. She already knows who they are, and it's as if she's been expecting them all along. The mercenaries, caught off guard, try to push past their discomfort and get down to the business of the mission. But Baba Yaga seems more interested in asking questions than answering them. She doesn't rush. She doesn't bow to their expectations. The mercenaries attempt to brief her on the situation, outlining the mission objectives and their own strategy, but she's not impressed. Instead of agreeing to follow their lead, she asks, "What are you going to do when your high-tech gadgets and fancy weapons don't work against them?" She's not just talking about the enemy, she's talking about their entire way of fighting. It's clear from the start that she doesn't hold the mercenaries' advanced tactics in high regard. Baba Yaga has a plan, though it's not one the mercenaries are prepared to hear. As they continue the briefing, she interrupts, dropping the most unexpected piece of information. "This mission is not about firepower. It's about mind games. And you've got a lot to learn, my dear mercenaries." The words hang in the air, a challenge that the mercenaries don't know how to respond to. She's already making them question everything they thought they knew about warfare. In that moment, it's clear that this is not going to be the kind of mission they are used to. They are not the top dogs here. The real question is, what does the galaxy's most unpredictable human bring to the table? And more importantly, are the mercenaries ready for what she's about to unleash? The mercenaries' initial discomfort with Baba Yaga only deepens as they begin to realize that she isn't going to follow their plans. At first, they try to maintain control of the mission. They attempt to brief her on the enemy's tactics, their strategies, and their high-tech weaponry, all while positioning themselves as the dominant force in the team. But Baba Yaga isn't having it. Her response is simple yet unsettling. "What good is all your tech when it fails to outthink the enemy?" She doesn't dismiss their strategies outright, but she doesn't seem impressed either. Instead of discussing weaponry, she starts analyzing their enemy's psychology, pointing out gaps in the mercenaries' understanding of the rogue faction's behavior. Where the mercenaries have seen a ruthless enemy capable of annihilating entire planets with sheer force, Baba Yaga sees something different, a culture driven by fear, arrogance, and an overestimation of their own strength. She begins by challenging their assumptions. The mercenaries' elite status has always been based on firepower, tactical precision, and military expertise. Their weapons are the best money can buy, their skills are honed in the crucible of countless wars, and they believe they have seen everything the galaxy can throw at them. Yet Baba Yaga asks pointed questions that force them to reconsider. What happens when your strength is turned against you? When your enemy isn't interested in a fair fight? At first, the mercenaries are confused by her insistence on psychological tactics. They're soldiers, not psychologists. But as Baba Yaga starts offering insights into the rogue faction's behavior, something clicks. They realize she's not only talking about understanding the enemy's mindset, she's discussing ways to manipulate that mindset, to plant seeds of doubt and fear that will weaken the enemy from within. Her strategy is unorthodox, not reliant on weapons, but on human ingenuity and creativity, something the mercenaries have never fully understood. While they look to brute force and technology to solve their problems, Baba Yaga looks at human history, ancient traditions, and cultural quirks to craft methods of attack. You think you can defeat them with guns and ships? No. You defeat them by making them doubt themselves. By making them question everything they've ever known. The mercenaries, still skeptical but intrigued, watch as Baba Yaga begins to lay out her first plan. Instead of a direct assault, she suggests something much subtler, infiltrating the rogue faction's base and spreading misinformation. To the mercenaries, this seems like a fool's errand. They're used to direct confrontation, to blowing things up and making a loud, unforgettable impact. The thought of creeping into enemy territory, planting false information, and then waiting for it to cause chaos seems like an inefficient waste of time. But Baba Yaga insists. "Trust me," she says, with a hint of amusement in her voice. "The enemy is a lot more fragile than you think. Their strength is built on fear and uncertainty. You don't need to defeat them with weapons, you need to show them that they're already losing. Make them question the loyalty of their own troops, create doubt in their leaders, and watch as they crumble from within." The mercenaries reluctantly agree to her plan, although they remain doubtful about its effectiveness. They infiltrate the enemy base, planting seeds of fear, spreading rumors about betrayal and impending doom. At first, nothing seems to change. But as time passes, small fractures begin to form within the rogue faction. Soldiers start second-guessing their orders, questioning their leaders' motives, and suddenly, the once unified force begins to splinter. The mercenaries begin to see the results of Baba Yaga's unconventional strategy. The enemy's cohesiveness begins to deteriorate, and cracks appear in their command structure. This isn't the sudden, explosive victory the mercenaries are used to, but it's working. The rogue faction, which once seemed unstoppable, is now faltering. The mercenaries can't help but be impressed, though they remain on edge. What Baba Yaga is doing doesn't feel like war in the traditional sense. It feels like a game of manipulation and mind tricks, dangerous, yes, but far outside their realm of expertise. Yet Baba Yaga's methods continue to work. She doesn't just play on the enemy's fears, she exploits the small, overlooked details. She plays on their pride, their arrogance, and their overestimation of their own invincibility. The mercenaries watch as Baba Yaga employs everything from psychological warfare to ancient human rituals designed to disorient the enemy. In one instance, she stages a fake ritualistic ceremony meant to confuse the enemy into believing that they have angered ancient cosmic forces. The result is a full-scale retreat, as the rogue faction's leaders decide to abandon a strategic outpost in fear of divine retribution. The mercenaries are astonished. They've never seen anything like it. There's no flashy tech, no laser beams or explosive bombs, just the mind of a single human who knows how to manipulate fear and uncertainty better than any alien strategist they've encountered. But it doesn't end there. As the mission progresses, Baba Yaga's reputation only grows. The mercenaries may be skilled in combat, but they find themselves increasingly reliant on her expertise. It becomes clear that, while their weapons are formidable, it's Baba Yaga's insights that are truly turning the tide of the war. They begin to follow her lead, and though they still carry out traditional assaults when needed, it's her influence on the enemy's minds that seems to be making the biggest impact. However, this shift in tactics also causes some friction. The mercenaries are used to being in charge. They've always prided themselves on being the best in the galaxy, the elite who can get the job done no matter the odds. But now, they find themselves deferring to a human, an unpredictable, older woman who's clearly not afraid to take risks. Some of them question whether they can trust her fully. After all, she's so different from anything they've ever known. She doesn't follow orders, doesn't conform to the expectations of a military leader, and yet she's the one making the critical calls. Baba Yaga's methods are terrifying in their unorthodoxy. But in the end, it's clear that her genius is undeniable. The mercenaries may not fully understand how she does it, but they can't deny that she's turning the war in their favor. The once unfathomable power of the rogue faction is beginning to crumble, not because of superior weaponry, but because of the quiet, insidious chaos that Baba Yaga has unleashed. As they move forward in the mission, the mercenaries realize that they have underestimated humanity. What they once thought of as a weak, unrefined species has proven to be capable of unimaginable cunning. They begin to understand that humans don't need to be the strongest or the most technologically advanced. They simply need to outsmart their enemies. And in this case, they have an operative who's doing exactly that. The situation becomes even more complex as the rogue faction, now plagued with internal strife, launches a desperate counterattack. They've begun to regroup, realizing the psychological warfare isn't as easy to counter as their mercenary enemies had hoped. They call upon their own forces, elite soldiers, mind-controlled warriors, and technologically advanced weaponry. What once seemed like a disorganized enemy is now starting to look like a formidable threat again. The mercenaries, along with Baba Yaga, prepare for the inevitable clash. But as they gather their forces, Baba Yaga's approach continues to baffle and frustrate her allies. The mercenaries, though they've learned to respect her psychological tactics, still can't fully embrace her methods. They want a battle plan, something they can prepare for, something predictable. Instead, Baba Yaga gives them a suggestion that throws everything they've planned into disarray. "We're not going to fight them head-on." "Not yet." The mercenaries are taken aback. They've been trained for high-intensity warfare, for shock and awe tactics. A strategic retreat or waiting could cost them precious time and territory. To them, the idea of not engaging the enemy immediately feels like cowardice. Baba Yaga's strategy is simple, but to the mercenaries, it sounds like madness. "We're going to take a different route," she says. "We'll make them chase us. Make them think they've got us cornered. Then, we'll strike from a place they never expected." Her plan revolves around luring the rogue faction into a trap of their own making. Instead of fighting them directly, Baba Yaga suggests they provoke the enemy, baiting them into overextending themselves. She doesn't just want them to fight, she wants them to make a mistake. The mercenaries, seasoned as they are, can't quite grasp the beauty of the strategy. They argue. They want to take the fight to the enemy, crush them with overwhelming force. But Baba Yaga won't back down. "We don't need to be the strongest," she says. "We just need them to think they are." It's a gamble, one that makes the mercenaries uneasy. But Baba Yaga isn't swayed. She is unwavering in her belief that the enemy's arrogance is their greatest weakness. They are blinded by their own technological superiority, by their faith in their weapons. She plans to use that arrogance against them. At first, the strategy seems absurd. The mercenaries carry out the plan with hesitance, creating false trails, using decoy ships, and leaving behind traces of destruction that suggest a retreat. They allow themselves to be pursued, drawing the rogue faction deeper into enemy territory. The mercenaries brace themselves for a confrontation they can't entirely prepare for, an ambush in hostile space. And then it happens. The rogue faction, overeager and overconfident, falls right into the trap. They move faster, push harder, and underestimate the intelligence of their prey. By the time they realize they've been led astray, it's too late. Baba Yaga and the mercenaries have set up an intricate network of hidden stations and disguised bases. The rogue faction is caught in a web of their own making, surrounded on all sides by enemies they didn't even know existed. This sudden shift in tactics catches the rogue faction off guard. What they thought would be a quick, decisive strike turns into a labyrinth of confusion and chaos. Baba Yaga's psychological warfare, combined with the mercenaries' well-timed ambush, leaves the rogue faction disoriented and vulnerable. The mercenaries begin to pick off their weakened forces one by one, relying not on firepower, but on the enemy's inability to maintain control of their own strategy. Baba Yaga watches from a distance, calculating each move with the precision of a chess master. She doesn't take joy in the destruction she's caused, but she recognizes that this is the only way to break the enemy's resolve. She's already anticipating the next move, what will happen once the rogue faction realizes they've been outwitted. Sure enough, as the tide of battle turns, the rogue faction regroups, this time with a new strategy. They begin to adapt, using the knowledge they've gained to counter Baba Yaga's psychological tricks. But that's exactly what she's been waiting for. As they grow more desperate and frustrated, Baba Yaga makes her final play. She lets the rogue faction think they've regained control, only to pull the rug out from under them in one last, devastating move. She manipulates the enemy's perception of their own strength, convincing them that they have surrounded her forces completely. In reality, they're walking straight into another trap. The moment the rogue faction's leaders think they've cornered their prey, Baba Yaga sets off a chain of carefully planned events. Communications are severed, systems are hacked, and the rogue faction's forces are thrown into disarray once more. It's an elegant move, a final twist in the game. The rogue faction's elite warriors, once so sure of their superiority, now find themselves isolated and vulnerable. Baba Yaga doesn't need to engage them in a fight, she's already won. The enemy's will is shattered by their own arrogance and by the realization that they've been outsmarted by a single human and a group of mercenaries who are now starting to understand the true power of unpredictability. The mercenaries, now seeing the brilliance of Baba Yaga's strategy, begin to trust her completely. They've gone from seeing her as a dangerous wildcard to recognizing her as a master strategist in her own right. Her methods, though unorthodox and uncomfortable at times, have proven effective. They begin to learn from her, not just in terms of warfare, but in how to think beyond their traditional methods. But even as the rogue faction falls, Baba Yaga's influence continues to grow. The once dominant mercenaries now find themselves more reliant on her, not just for guidance in battle but in navigating the complexities of war. In a galaxy where strength, power, and technological superiority often determine the outcome of battles, humanity has shown that the greatest weapon may not always be the one that makes the most noise. Sometimes it's the one that plays the quietest, most subtle game of all. The mercenaries, now loyal to Baba Yaga, begin to understand something profound. Humanity, with all its imperfections, has a unique ability to fight not with the strength of numbers or the firepower of weapons, but with cunning, creativity, and an understanding of the human psyche that no other species in the galaxy can replicate. They've learned that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy isn't a ship, a gun, or a bomb, it's the mind of a single human willing to fight dirty. As the rogue faction's forces break apart and retreat, the Galactic Council, still watching from a distance, cannot believe the turn of events. What was supposed to be an easy intervention, led by the elite mercenaries, has become an overwhelming demonstration of humanity's unpredictability and brutal ingenuity. The mercenaries themselves are shaken. Despite their initial disdain and disbelief toward Baba Yaga's unconventional tactics, they are now forced to admit that she has outplayed them at every turn. The surviving leaders of the rogue faction, once certain of their victory, begin to understand the true scale of their defeat. What was supposed to be a swift conquest has turned into a humiliating retreat. They no longer see their enemies as humans, but as something else, something that cannot be controlled, something too chaotic and unpredictable to be crushed under the weight of superior technology. This realization begins to unsettle the leadership of the Galactic Council. They had expected the mercenaries to hold the line, to be the ones to finish the job. Instead, they are left with one uncomfortable truth: humanity has just reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. Baba Yaga, standing at the center of the chaos, understands the significance of the moment, though her expression remains unreadable. Her gaze is sharp as she watches the fleeing forces of the rogue faction, knowing that she's already won, though there's still one last lesson she must impart to the mercenaries who now depend on her for guidance. "You see," she says, breaking the silence that has settled over the battlefield, "they never really had a chance. They thought they were fighting an army, but all they were up against was a human mindset. You think you know war? You think you understand what it takes to win? The moment you start thinking you have all the answers, that's when you lose. There's no winning formula. There's just chaos. And we've learned to dance in it." The mercenaries, standing in stunned silence, are forced to absorb her words. They've spent their careers mastering the art of war, planning, preparation, precision. But Baba Yaga has shown them that none of that matters if you can't outsmart the enemy. It's no longer about firepower or strategy. It's about thinking faster, thinking different, and most importantly, making the enemy think they're in control when they're actually walking right into your trap. As the rogue faction falls apart, its leaders attempt to flee to the last remaining stronghold they have, an ancient, forgotten station deep in uncharted space. The mercenaries, now fully aligned with Baba Yaga's tactics, prepare for a final confrontation. But this time, the plan is simple: leave no escape, no safe haven, no hope for retreat. Their target is not the enemy's technology, not their weapons, but their ability to believe in themselves. They want to strike at the heart of their confidence, the one thing the rogue faction can't afford to lose. For Baba Yaga, this isn't just about warfare. It's a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity doesn't fight like other species because they don't need to. They don't rely on superior technology, nor do they depend on overwhelming numbers. They win through something far more unpredictable: the ability to adapt, to think outside the conventional boundaries of war. While others are busy perfecting their weaponry, humanity perfects chaos. The final battle takes place not on some grand battlefield, but in the depths of the rogue faction's last refuge. It's a simple, almost poetic confrontation, a war of wits, psychological manipulation, and raw human creativity. The mercenaries, now emboldened by Baba Yaga's methods, follow her lead. The rogue faction has made one crucial error: they assumed they could outfight humanity's unpredictability. They were wrong. Baba Yaga's ultimate move is a calculated risk, a final step in her plan to destabilize the enemy completely. She uses the very fear and doubt she's instilled in them to destroy their confidence. The rogue faction's leaders, realizing they have no backup, no reinforcements, begin to fracture. They fall into panic, their careful plans unraveling as they turn on each other. The mercenaries and Baba Yaga move in, not with overwhelming force, but with precise, targeted strikes at the heart of the faction's command structure. It's a clean, clinical dissection of their entire organization, one that doesn't need to be violent to be effective. The Galactic Council watches as the rogue faction collapses. The mercenaries, who once thought themselves the pinnacle of military might, now understand that their superiority wasn't in their weapons, but in the way they could manipulate the very fabric of warfare itself. And at the center of it all stands the human woman, Baba Yaga, an enigma, a force of nature who has shattered everything they believed to be true about combat. The mercenaries now understand that the greatest strength humanity has isn't in its firepower or its advanced tech, but in the fact that they can think in ways no other species can replicate. They are the ultimate wild card. As the rogue faction's remnants fade into history, Baba Yaga's name becomes a legend, a whispered tale that spreads across the galaxy. To the Galactic Council, she represents something more than just a skilled operative. She represents the raw, unbridled potential of humanity. The same humanity they had dismissed as primitive, unworthy of consideration in the grand scheme of galactic warfare, has turned the tide of the war in their favor. The mercenaries, once the galaxy's most feared and respected warriors, now find themselves in a strange new position. They are no longer the top dogs. They've learned the hard way that there's always someone, something, that can outsmart them. And that something, in this case, is human ingenuity and unpredictability. The Galactic Council, shaken by the events that have unfolded, begins to reassess their view of humanity. They can no longer afford to underestimate humans as a lower-tier species. With Baba Yaga as their example, the galaxy now understands that humanity fights not just with weapons, but with its mind, and that is something no one can predict or control. As the dust settles, and the rogue faction is all but wiped from existence, Baba Yaga finally speaks. Her words aren't triumphal, they are quiet, almost serene. This wasn't about winning a war. It was about sending a message. If you ever want to know how humans fight, you'll have to ask. But I won't be here to explain it. With that, Baba Yaga steps away, leaving the mercenaries and the rest of the galaxy to contemplate just how much they've learned about humanity. And perhaps, for the first time, they understand that the true strength of humans isn't in their guns, their bombs, or their technology, but in the way they think, the way they fight, and most importantly, the way they never give up. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again.